Hey everyone, welcome back! Today, we're taking a look at the last Incarnon weapon, the Praedos Tonfas. It should go without saying that as an Incarnon weapon, there will be loose Zariman spoilers here. I would strongly recommend completing the Angels of Zariman quest before watching this video. Alright, so Praedos has the rap of being the worst of the three Incarnon weapons, and people are also expecting more from a weapon that requires rank 4 from the Holdfast Syndicate at the Chrysalis. But is it actually a bad weapon? Let's take a closer look. The Praedos can only be obtained from Cavallero. To craft it, it is tradable. You will need 15 Void Plume Pinions and 30 Void Plume Quills. If you've seen my previous two videos on the Phenmor and the Laetum, you'll know that pinions come from dormant angels. You can't use Hydroid or Necros anymore to double their drops, but one spawns on every mission. I would recommend Halico Perimeter because it's an easy extermination mission you can't fail, and you're free to search for the elusive Void Plume Crest while hunting down the dormant angel spawn. Void Plume Quills, on the other hand, can come from Melica, one of the Zariman Cephalons. You will want to find the Zariman Accolades, or the keys as we like to call them, and insert it into the Cephalon console. Pick up the quill when it drops. Keys are always nearby within 100 meters, and you can hear them by their distinct, higher-pitched humming sound, similar to caches. Being a melee, the Praedos has very different evolution tree perks than its gun counterparts. Incarnon weapons have 5 evolutions that you unlock in succession by completing small challenges. At each stage, you can pick one of 3 perks and can freely switch between them at Cavallero if you don't like your choices. Always finish all challenges because all 3 weapons change drastically in playstyle upon reaching evolution 5. How do we know which evolution tree perks are the best? Well, that's my job to help you with that, so let's get to it. The first evolution only has one choice and enables Incarnon mode on the Praedos. To activate it, you need to reach 5 times combo, which is 80 hits, and then use a grounded heavy attack. Whenever you're above the transformation threshold, the game will let you know by having the combo meter shimmer with void energy. The Incarnon mode has 40% bonus attack speed and an extra 2 meter range and lasts 90 seconds. Heavy attacking so long as you're above the 5 times combo will reset this timer. Besides that, there isn't really anything unique about the Praedos, but let's look at the other evolutions first. Evolution 2 has plus 20% sprint and slide. This is actually a pretty solid perk tree, and I guess if you want to rush through missions, this is a good choice. Then again, if you're rushing through a mission, you probably aren't using your melee. Slide isn't really that fantastic for missions, sprint speed helps, but parkour stats are more important. Telos Boltace, on the other hand, buffs all parkour by 20%. This includes bullet jump, velocity, roll distance, aim glide duration, and wall latch, so for the purposes of mobility, there isn't really that much of a difference between Praedos and Telos. Sprint speed and slide are handy in endurance missions, or whether 20 minutes, 1 hour, 8 hours, but the other perks on Evolution 2 are actually good, so I would not use this perk. The other 2 perks are 20% attack speed, which is always handy, and Seismic Slam for 50% slam radius increase. The 50% radius increase results in 2.25 times more area covered, so this is actually a massive buff. This is my standard perk I normally take because while 20% attack speed is handy, there are many ways to get attack speed already. Most notably, the Incarnon form itself grants 40%. 20% attack speed also isn't good enough to replace anything on your builds, so I would prefer a different unique perk like the slam radius. Why? Well, let's look at Evolution 3. I have plus 15 initial combos an option, which sounds cool, but this is actually the worst perk on this evolution. Just wait. 1.5 meters slide attack radius is useless because the Incarnon form already grants 2 meters more, and we have primed reach granting 3 meters, and we even have the option to slot spring-loaded blade. Basically, notice how the nodes that seem good that I'm skipping over are even weaker than single mods themselves, and this one only applies the slide attacks. Tonfas have an extremely good Sovereign Outcast stance. It has 859% normalized attack per second on the neutral E. This is higher than about 95% of the stances in the game. Rook Edict deals an 800% forced bleed on its 3rd combo hit on top of the weapon's massive slash weight. You don't need to depend on slide attacks, and compared to spamming E, the slide attack falls behind in effective DPS and also makes it harder to consistently hit the same enemy. So, I went with the left perk, Shockwave Synergy. This makes every enemy you hit with your slam radius give a 4 combo count. Combined with Evolution 2's 50% slam radius increase, your slam hitbox covers about a 12 meter radius area. In the Ballroom Simulacrum, this is greater than the entire 20 enemy spawn area. On top of this, it stacks with Neramon's opening slam. Jumping and slamming down his operator will slam your Praedos. It will trigger the double combo gain before calculating Shockwave Synergy, meaning slamming his operator will immediately double what you gain from the perk even if you didn't proc opening slam in a previous slam. You can easily get 150 to 200 combo in an instant this way on Steel Path spawns, which is the only place where your perk tree matters anyways. Star Chart won't care about what you pick. This is why the 15 initial combo is useless. Even without Naramon, you will still get 75 to 100 combo per slam. Evolution 4 offers Vaulting Leap, which is very niche since you don't usually double jump to get to a specific height that often in mission. It has its uses, but I would recommend only turning this on when you expect to use it a lot. Otherwise, I would pick the middle perk plus 30% parkour velocity. I don't think this affects aim glide duration or wall latch like Telos Boltace does, but 30% parkour velocity should give you at least 30% more bullet jump velocity and possibly 30% more roll distance. I would expect this to feel pretty similar, and it's technically better. The loss of aim glide and wall latch is generally unnoticeable in normal play. Swift Transmute is the left perk option and lets you activate Incarnon form at just 3x combo, which is 40 hits, but as you saw from using the Evolution 2 and 3 perks, and optionally with Niramon's opening slam, it is a complete joke to build up to 12x combo, so I don't see the point of using Swift Transmute. Evolution 5 is interesting, but nowhere near as amazing as the two guns. The left side perk gives you 50% heavy attack efficiency, but it requires slide attack kills to proc. At any level where you can slide attack kill, you don't need heavy attacks. At any level that you need the heavy attack multipliers with the forced slash, slide attacks can't kill enemies consistently. Status kills don't count for this ability, meaning slide attack bleed kills will not proc transfigured momentum. It must be raw damage DPS, therefore in my opinion, this ability is useless. Besides, on a heavy attack build, you don't even need the capped 90% heavy efficiency because the slam already gives so much combo. So you're really just deciding between the middle perk and the right perk. Kinetic Harmony gives you the option of faster heavy attack windup speed, without having to mod for it. This can easily fit with Amalgam Organ Shatter that normally only gives 60% windup without having to slot Killing Blow. Killing Blow is a strong mod, but it only applies to heavy attacks, meaning dropping it opens up your build to a better hybrid light-heavy build. The right side perk no longer works to build combo on Exalted Melee, which I was going to showcase on Baruch because he's so strong his waves have a habit of killing everything behind your target, which doesn't give combo except on direct hit with your fists. So don't bother testing it, one of the hotfixes Ghost patched it a few days ago. How does it compare to its brethren? The Kronen Prime and Telos Boltace? Praedos is slightly faster than Telos, with 1.17 attack speed that's equal to Kronen. They all have between 200 and 212 base damage, with Praedos being the 200 and Kronen being 212. This is a 5.67% DPS gap and is basically irrelevant. Notably, Telos, though, is puncture based, making it crap at slashing, unlike Praedos and Kronen, and is fully reliant on Sovereign Outcasts, Rogued Edicts, Neutral E for the 800% force bleed on the third hit. Both Praedos and Kronen are 80% slash based and thus proc very similar bleed weights and sizes. Kronen only has 2% more crit chance than Praedos, but has an astounding 34% status chance instead of 20. In practice, this leads to Kronen killing enemies about 1.5 times faster than Praedos purely because of the amount of bleed dots it can apply. But here's the kicker. If they both bleed out enemies with an insane amount of procs quickly, does it really matter that Praedos is 1.5 times less DPS? From a KPM standpoint, this means Praedos is inherently weaker, but only when compared to one of the strongest melees in the game, besides AoE glaive spam. On the other hand, Praedos gives more attack speed and more range than Kronen Prime through its Incarnon form. Now, you may be concerned about that 0.6 follow-through stat, but look at this. It doesn't really seem to matter. The sheer raw damage leading into the huge amount of bleeds makes it mostly irrelevant that the follow-through stat is 0.6. You will still rip everything apart regardless of if they're caught in the range of your swings. Most interestingly, Praedos offers the parkour benefits of Telos while also offering optional sprint speed and slides, which I'm not using, but similar effectiveness to the Kronen DPS-wise with parkour bonuses because the weapon's this strong. The main determinant in KPM is how quickly you get from one group of enemies to the other, not how fast you kill said enemy. Praedos feels far more comfortable to use than Kronen, easily reaching out to a 9.5 meter range, whereas Kronen sits maxed at 7.5, easily reaching and even surpassing plus 100% attack speed without detracting from the build while also being a hybrid heavy weapon, whereas Kronen requires mod slots to do even half of that. And finally, Kronen killing things fast enough where building combo is an actual problem, but Praedos building combo instantly to max no matter the mission. Star charts, Steel Path, base Steel Path, Endurance. Essentially, we got a slightly weaker Kronen Prime with all the benefits we want from Telos Boltace plus more. It's a side grade, but in my eyes, the best side grade, because comfiness is the most important stat once a weapon has enough DPS. After all, even with the status gap, Praedos still reaches 152% status at 12x combo, which is done near instantly, and Kronen sitting at 258.4 status at 12x combo. Let's look at those builds, shall we? This is what you would call a basic corrosive build. If you play on normal star chart or you're just running a standard steel path mission, this will do you well enough to rip enemies apart. If you're facing Corpus instead, just drop Shocking Touch for the 60/60 Toxin mod to bypass their shields. Notice I slotted Condition Overload here. For normal star chart, this weapon is strong enough it will shred regardless of CO or prime pressure point, and even the Bane won't matter. Basic star chart, like I said, doesn't care about Bane, so you could slot in Spring-Loaded Blade if you want for bonus range, but essentially I want to discuss this for steel path. Praedos is not strong enough to kill enemies in a timely manner with just prime pressure point on base steel path. You need a primer for viral if you want it to kill quickly and slice through most of your steel path enemies in less than a second. Condition Overload will easily provide more base damage than prime pressure point when using a primer like Nucor or Epitaph, while also benefiting off the viral stacks to boost your raw damage without having to mod viral on Praedos itself. This is primarily a bleed weapon, so regardless they will bleed out because Sovereign Outcast procs 800% bleed on the third hit of Rogue Edict regardless of if the weapon itself is proccing bleed. This is your go-to for a one and done steel path setup, comfortably strong that you don't need to mod around slash and can go raw damage, but not overwhelmingly strong to the point that you can ignore a primer. The weapon gets up to 130% crit chance with just one Gladiator mod and Blood Rush. You can slot an extra Glad mod on your frame if you want, and the 2-set bonus plus Arcane Avenger will get you to 197 or essentially guaranteed oranges if you like this melee. What's unique about this build is we aren't modding any attack speed at all, which is pretty unusual. Kronen Prime needs to slot attack speed no matter what in a conventional sense, so this actually saves a slot. And in exchange, we get a slot for Gladiator Might for better crit scaling and bonus crit damage to close the gap against Kronen. This is part of the reason I feel it pulls ahead, and remember, while it shows 5.5 meters here like Kronen, it's 7.5 meters in Incarnon, whereas Kronen would have to drop another slot, again on top of the attack speed mod to reach 7.5. For base steel path, this weapon's damage output is high enough with a primer that the 0.6 follow through stat isn't a big issue, and I would just stick to the 7.5 meter range setup. It is essentially a slightly weaker Kronen after all, and the weapon has never had issues with follow through, due to the sheer amount of bleed procs, procs, not damage numbers, that it creates. Praedos is the same. We also know a corrosive Kronen does destroy base steel path because people have made those builds before, and those don't care that much about status. Now, what if we want something that scales a bit better, perhaps into endurance? Then we have a couple of build options. This is your typical slash Praedos with a couple of tweaks. Remember that our Incarnon form gives us 40% attack speed. I'm going to be stacking this with Arcane Strike on our Warframe. It grants 60% attack speed by chance on hits, which should be easy with the multi-hit strikes of the Sovereign Outcast stance. Don't use Gemini Cross. I'm aware Praedos has a default dash stance polarity. Change it. Sovereign is a million times better with way better DPS and force bleeds. It has 1.5 times more normalized damage, faster combos, and literally triple the amount of force bleed procs. You'll notice all our top mods and the corners in the bottom are the same. The only thing that has changed is Spring-Loaded Blade and Weeping Wounds. This is all you need for a scaling steel path build. We get 150% status from Weeping and 12x combo and Spring-Loaded Blade for that 9.5 meter poke. I would once again recommend considering a second Gladiator mod on your frame, which I will get into in a bit because it will boost you to 152 crit, and Avenger with Combat Discipline self-damage to proc it will push this to 197 for all oranges. So how does this compare to the Kronen? We get a 9.5 meter poke range instead of 7.5 meters. In fact, I don't think Kronen can even afford to run Spring-Loaded Blade usually, unless you drop Gladiator Might. Kronen barely has higher crit chance and still wants to keep it, so you will either lose crit chance and crit damage to get to 7.5 meters, or stay at 5.5 meters for more damage than Praedos through Gladiator Mights. But look at this. 20 Corrupted Heavy Gunners. I sucked them up in Prime and Slash. Does that 0.6 follow through stat seems like it means much with the amount of bleeds I'm putting on? Sure, some die slower, but in a normal mission you wouldn't stop to watch them bleed out like this either. The status gap between Kronen and Praedos is only visible when the 0.6 follow through becomes important due to balling up a ton of enemies. The sheer amount of bleed procs against fewer enemies makes the 0.6 inconsequential. So if you don't ball enemies together, Kronen and Praedos perform near equal. The thing is, if you ball enemies together and kill them, even if Praedos takes 1 second longer to kill, you now have nothing to kill around you. You will spend much more time getting to the next ball of enemies you create than the 1 second you lost DPSing the ball sack. These are examples of weapons that are so strong that the main KPM determinant, like I said previously, becomes how quickly you can get to the next enemy to cut them up, rather than individual TTK. This is where all the utility Praedos offers more than makes up for the very minor KPM loss. So that 9.5 meter I would say is definitely worth it. It isn't needed in grouping setups, but if it blenders a meatball of enemies with massive follow through loss, then what do you think a 9.5 meter poke stick will do to ungrouped enemies? And once again, we don't need to slot attack speed at all, getting to plus 100% with Arcane Strike and then Incarnon form providing 40%. This is actually an extremely cozy build, and I would rather use this than the Kronen since Kronen's DPS is so high. It often is seen as unnecessary, and I would gladly give up some DPS for massive quality of life improvements because, let's face it, this weapon is much better than the Telos Boltace in the DPS department by a long shot. What if you do want to do a grouping setup like the meatball blender I showed? Well, we can tweak a few things here, and that's where I can bring Gyre into the mix. Very few things need to change. All you do with the Praedos, is drop spring-loaded blade for Gladiator Vice. You still get 7.5 meter range on the build. This ensures you can comfortably cut across the entire meatball with some range forgiveness. Gladiator Vice pushes the total attack speed even higher for net plus 130%, while also providing one extra Gladiator set bonus. This means you do not need that pesky Gladiator mod on your frame, though you can still do that if you want. This lets the build reach 152 crit, and because we're on a melee focused build, you can actually double slot Arcane Avenger and Arcane Strike so you get both the sweet attack speed on a weapon that hits this fast due to the Incarnon plus Gladiator Vice and Strike, and Combat Discipline self-damage to trigger the flat 45% crit buff from Arcane Avenger. So total 197 crit like before for basically all oranges. We still got that 152% status at 12x combo with Weeping for those sweet slash procs on top of the force bleeds from Rogued Edict and the primed smite to double dip. One important thing I want to note is that whenever you use a melee focused build, I would recommend building your primary as a stat stick, with primary dexterity arcane to grant 7.5 seconds combo duration to your melee. Your primer pistol can also equip it, while having 2 auger mods for better energy to shield conversion on casting abilities to shield gates. This way you can get a base 20 seconds combo duration without having to mod for it on the melee. Easily instant priming from your pistol, which could be a new core, Epitaph, Atomos, even a full status Spore Lacer, and free auger mods for shield gating. Now let's look at Gyre. This is a rather simple melee focused build. The helmet is irrelevant, take whatever you like, it's just leftovers from testing, you do not need Eclipse here. Though Roar gives big DPS through double dipping bleeds, and other stuff like Radial Blind or Breach Surge gives survivability and stealth multipliers. This Gyre is meant to be used with a Panzer, which is why I have Equilibrium here to offset the energy drain as we aren't using Arcane Energize. The Synthsat synergy from Viral Quills will also make enemies poop out tons of health orbs, which will offset the health loss from Combat Discipline. These are the same health orbs triggering Equilibrium. Prime Flow to give you a better energy bank since we're running 100 efficiency, so some situations can get ability spammy and risk bottoming out your bar. While 240 energy is a sizable base value, she wants her 3 and 4 to be up, and her 4 lasting only 22 seconds and costing 100 can get dicey if you need to throw your 2 twice quickly to group and then to shield gate. That would burn through 200 of your 240 in seconds. You want all 4 auger mods, including your primer, so that you reach 160 energy to shield conversion. This way, casting your 4 will instantly max your shields, or double casting your 2. Just keep in mind this build does not have natural talents, so realistically the only one I would recommend dropping for it would be Intensify. Even if you do that, your 3 Cathode Grace will still push your Praedos well over 200% crit chance for pure oranges and the occasional red. Rolling Guard for status cleanse, and a Shield Gate reset safety to cast abilities when shields break, and the 175 range for 21 meter suck on your Ballsack ability and 17.5 meter chain range on your 4. Prime sure-footed, so less time on your butts. Else, if you don't have it, slot Handspring. The build plays pretty comfy. You just have your 3 up at all times since it's self-sustaining once you start getting kills. The bleed procs will make it easy to start up kill stacks for adding duration, even though we only have 97 duration. Your 2 will hard CC enemies, and the electric chaining discharge from your 4 will stop all enemies except the furthest ones from hitting or shooting you. If you're interested in a light-heavy hybrid Praedos, which I would only recommend for dealing with Demless since the heavy attack half-force bleeds, letting you spam a 12x heavy, then a 10x heavy, a 9x heavy, etc. to quickly dispatch them, then you can just drop the contested spring-loaded blade and a Gladiator Vice slot for Reflex Coil instead. This way, even if you find Demless alone and can't ground slam to instantly build a 12x combo after using a heavy attack, you will still be able to deal heavy damage by having 90% heavy attack efficiency. For normal play, I would not recommend using this though, as the sheer amount of enemy spawns makes it extremely easy to build combo back up to 12x with slams. Though fodder enemies should die easily to the light attack spam from Rogued Edict and never need heavy attacks. I would normally recommend Neramon Focus School for Power Spike to keep up the melee combo counter, and also the super easy way to build combo with Opening Slam, which synergizes perfectly with Evolution 2 and 3 on the Praedos, but because of how easy it is to build combo, you also have the option to run Zeneric for energy, and the small strength bonus from Hardened Wellspring, or Madara if you want big dick DPS, or even Vazrin if you're taking this into endurance and intend to use its 12x heavy attacks to kill Demolists. Hopefully the builds and demonstrations today have shown you what Praedos can actually do. Although it doesn't match the DPS of Kronen, both melees, outside of glaives, which are literally Brahma but both melees, are so far and above the required DPS you would typically find because of their absurd slash weight, absurd stance multipliers, and absurd force bleeds from the stance combos, that their stat gap, which is literally realistically only the status chance difference from 20% versus 34, is mostly inconsequential. Remember that Praedos saves slots to offer more stats that Kronen is missing, while also offering parkour stats even stronger than those found on Telos Boltace. This is truly the middle ground between Telos and Kronen Prime, and I find is what results in the most comfortable, albeit not most powerful, but way more than adequate for all things Steel Path and Endurance, Tonfa. It isn't the boomstick we've come to expect from the Incarnon weapons, but manages to carve out its own very powerful niche. What do you think? If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet, subscribe. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering Garuda's rework and the Angels of Zariman update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. Don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.